Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight for Lakewood's Candidates Forum. My name is Jenny Evans. I'm the Vice Chair of the Legislative and Government Affairs Task Force for the Lakewood Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. This event tonight is sponsored by the Lakewood chapter of the League of Women Voters and the Lakewood Chamber of Commerce. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization which encourages the informed and active participation of citizens in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and seeks to influence public policy through education and advocacy. The Lakewood Chamber of Commerce is organized for the purpose of advancing the commercial, industrial, and professional interests of the community of Lakewood. The League and the Chamber provide a forum for all political candidates. The Candidates Forum is not an endorsement or rejection of any candidate's views. The League and the Chamber assume no responsibility for candidates' responses to the questions nor the motivations behind them. And at this time, I would like to introduce our moderator for the evening, Maria Shin. Maria is an attorney here in Lakewood and a past chairperson of the board of the Lakewood Chamber of Commerce. Thanks again.
Good evening. Welcome to this forum. I think it's going to be an excellent evening. We have wonderful candidates, as usual, in Lakewood, and we are eager to receive questions from the audience and have them answer the questions. Let me just go over some ground rules before we get started. The first I always mention is please silence your phones and watches. And as I mentioned, questions will be taken from the audience. The questions from the audience must be written on note cards provided. The questions must be signed or they will not be asked. The questioner's name, however, will not be read aloud by me. Questions may be directed to a specific candidate, but may be answered by all the candidates. Questions are screened by our wonderful bipartisan volunteer committee of League and Chamber members to assure appropriateness. The candidates' answers to questions are limited to 1 minute. I will interrupt the candidate if the time limit is exceeded because we have a lot to go through tonight and we want everyone to have an equal opportunity to be heard. In the spirit of fairness and impartiality, all candidates will be addressed as Mr. or Ms. as appropriate. Photography, video, and audio recording on personal or professional devices during the event is prohibited. The forum will be video recorded, and it's being recorded as we speak, and it will be made available after the event. Your participation in this forum constitutes your acceptance of these ground rules. So thank you all for coming tonight, and we will get started with the 3 candidates for the Lakewood School Board. All right, I had my assistant draw names before the event, and Ed Favor was picked. So he will go first for a 1-minute introduction. Mr. Favor.
Thank you. My name is Ed. Sorry about that. Good evening. My name is Ed Favor, and I'm serving on the Lakewood School Board and running for re-election. I was originally appointed to the school board by the sitting board members and have been re-elected several times since. During the time that I've been here, we've had probably some of the best accomplishments and some of the greatest challenges. We completed the complete rebuilding of the school district, the largest construction project in the history of Lakewood, which, by the way, coming in now gives us schools that are very up to standing to the worst thing that happened in the history, and that's the COVID situation. This past year has been the most difficult school year most anybody remembers in Lakewood, and we are working hard to get back on track. And that's my goal, that we can keep the ship steady in these difficult waters as we go forward and hopefully get out of this COVID situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Favor. Ms. Katzenberger.
Good evening. Thank you to the League of Women Voters, the Chamber of Commerce, my fellow candidates, and the community for this opportunity. I'm Nora Katzenberger, and I'm a first-time candidate for Lakewood School Board. I'm running because I feel that my professional background, community and school volunteer experience, and day-to-day interaction with the schools will help me bring new energy and new ideas to the board. I have 2 daughters who currently attend Lakewood schools, and I see what the experience is like for our students, families, and teachers right now. The past 2 years have been transformative for all of us, and we must move forward with a fresh perspective. I will work to improve communication so everyone is informed and can participate in decision-making. I will ensure that we examine what we've learned over the past couple of years to take advantage of technology and address individual learning needs. And I will advocate for policies and practices that reflect our values. Our schools are the backbone of our great city, and I will bring new energy
Thank you,
and
Ms.
ideas.
Katzenberger.
Thank you.
Ms. Shaughnessy.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I've had the privilege of serving as a member of the Board of Education for a number of years, and my belief in the necessity of a strong system of public education to support a democracy has only grown stronger. I believe that my experience prepares me for the work, challenges, and opportunities to come. And I've been fortunate to work collaboratively with educators in the community to build and rebuild our schools, balance the needs of students, staff, and families in response to the emergence of COVID, initiate a comprehensive and multifaceted effort to address issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion, contribute to the development of our vision of a Lakewood graduate, and meet the board's responsibility for fiscal oversight and focus on policy, leaving educators the responsibility for guiding and teaching.
Thank you, Ms. Shaughnessy. I appreciate that. Okay, now we're going to start with questions from the audience, and each candidate has 1 minute to respond. And again, I would like to remind the audience that we would like for you to submit questions on the postcards, and there are people in the periphery that can hand you a postcard and also pick one up for you. Thank you. All right, we will start with Ms. Katzenberger. Regarding COVID, what decisions do you think Lakewood City Schools got right, and what would you like to go back and redo if you could? Why?
Thank you. I think that currently the decision to have a mask mandate is the correct decision, and our numbers show that. And comparing to school districts that currently had it optional, they're having much higher numbers and having to put the mask mandate in after the fact. I think last fall was very difficult, and it was a time when people were trying to figure out what decisions to make as the situation was evolving. I think if we were to go back, we would have maybe used different criteria to open up the schools and get our kids back in school faster. But the overarching necessity is that we need to keep everybody safe, students, teachers, and families, because stopping community spread is what will eventually end this pandemic. So I support everything we can do to keep everybody safe and keep our kids in school. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Shaughnessy, would you please answer the same questions?
I would agree with much of what Nora said. I think right now we're using a layered approach to keep our kids in school full-time in the classroom, and that involves our good ventilation systems, mandatory mask wearing for all adults, students, and teachers, encouraging vaccination, having vaccination clinics. 85% of our staff is vaccinated, which is encouraging. In terms of what we may have done better, we erred on the side, I would say, of safety for our families and students, and perhaps we could have gone back sooner, but I would still prefer to err on the side of safety.
Thank you. Mr. Favor.
Probably the most difficult process that we had last year was that for all of its previous experience, the board and the management of the board always moved in slower, more thoughtful decision-making process. The COVID situation required a faster decision-making process, and quite frankly, that was out of the norm of how we've previously done it. So there was a little catch-up time there to get up to. Now, in this year, as Betsy mentioned, we're using a layered approach. We've learned of how the process worked last year to make it more efficient and more proactive, yet able to react to changes as we go forward. And so you're going to see every so often there's going to be an update of what we're going to do for the next period of time rather than for the whole year.
Thank you. And this is a follow-up question from the audience about COVID. Is the mask mandate working for Lakewood schools? When will it end? And we will start with Ms. Shaughnessy.
Yes, it is working. We have evidence that are spread in our schools. We have not had to quarantine students. It's working when compared to the districts that don't have masking or have voluntary masking. It is not going to end until public health officials would advise that it is time to end masking.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Shaughnessy. Mr. Favor.
Yes, it is working. Like any of the other measures that we take, nothing is 100%, nothing is perfect, but there is a definite advantage to do it. Our low numbers of illness validate that. We look at it periodically. The superintendent, initially we went 4 to 6 weeks. All you have to do is look in the media, and you can see which way the COVID is going, and now it's been extended until the end of this grading period, the end of this quarter. But we do have the ability to adjust as necessary. But short answer, yes, it's working.
Thank you. And Ms. Katzenberger.
I would agree that the mask mandate is working. It's very necessary, and it is important to keep an eye on the numbers and compare ourselves to other school districts where it's optional. I know that Parma was a great example, and one of our football games had to be scratched because the students couldn't come from Normandy. So I think keeping an eye on the numbers is important, and listening to public health officials is important. And I also think keeping tabs on speaking with our students and our teachers and our school community and what supports they need, because they're the ones who have to enact this policy. And I think keeping, with 2 kids in the schools and making sure they have their masks as they walk out the door to first school every day, you need to pay attention to how they're feeling and how this is affecting them. And I think keeping the lines of communication open is vitally important as well.
Thank you. As you know, and many in the audience knows, the school board operates our city rec department. What is your vision for the future of our rec programs? Ms. Shaughnessy.
My vision is that we continue on the path that we recently established with City Council in reviewing and looking at the way we're communicating and getting more input from the public regarding the programs they want to see. I think sometimes we forget that it's recreation and adult education department, and I know that this summer quite a bit of time and effort was spent on helping our students with remedial work to make up for the learning loss they suffered during COVID. So the whole department is always open to review, to strategic planning, but I think we're on the road to better communication.
Thank you. Mr. Favor.
It's working. It can always be improved. The agreement that we've engaged with the city as to responsibilities, areas of responsibilities for maintenance is a good move. For the many, many years that the district has been running recreation in Lakewood, which actually dates back to the 1930s, there was pretty much a agreement, but it wasn't clearly defined in a lot of ways. With this last year, and again, as Betsy mentioned, a lot of the department's efforts were diverted towards summer programs for the kids that were out of school. Now's a good time to reduce those thoughts and responsibilities to writing, which is what we're doing and moving forward. And I anticipate that these are going to be successful, and over a period of time, we'll continue to improve it.
Thank you. And Ms. Katzenberger.
I think that we're fortunate that we have a number of parents who've put a lot of time and energy into addressing some of the problems with the recreation department, especially in the last several months. A lot of their energy is focused on baseball field repair, but I think it uncovered the overall need to have a completely different approach to the rec department. I appreciate the fact that the new communication efforts are helping them gain ground, but it goes way beyond baseball fields. And it would be better if change could happen without parents having to put so much effort into trying to make change happen. It's great that we have involved parents, and I think that's always an asset to our community. But I think the hard part is when you've been doing this a certain way for a long time. It's hard to imagine a different way of doing things, and I think that's what we really need to do now.
Thank you. And I think we have time for one more question. Actually, it's a two-part question that's very good. And we'll start with Mr. Favor. What are you most concerned about this coming school year? What would you advocate doing about it?
I'm most concerned about having the kids in school as much as possible with this unpredictable situation and the direction that the pandemic is going. And in order to accomplish that, I think we need to maintain safety at its highest level. We have to err on the side of precaution and err on the side of safety. I believe that we are up to it. I believe the vast majority of the families agree with it. And if we stay the course on that, I think that we can be successful until a time comes when we can really get back to whatever we wish to refer to as normal. But the main thing is operate as safely as we can to keep the kids in school.
Thank you. Ms. Katzenberger.
Clearly, the pandemic is the biggest issue facing us right now, and keeping our students and teachers in the buildings safely is the most important goal, and something that will be ever changing, and we have to keep an eye on what is working and what isn't in order to make sure that we achieve that goal. We also need to keep an eye on how the other ways in which this situation is affecting our families, the socioeconomic impact, and the rising home prices that are making it difficult for families to stay here. And we also need to keep an eye on the political, social climate and how people are interacting with each other within our community, dealing with these huge problems. I think creating new opportunities for people to come together and actually have conversations and discussions will help alleviate some of that issue. So I think that's really important.
Thank you. And Ms. Shaughnessy.
Keeping our kids in school full-time in person is important. Clearly, we have to do many things at the same time. Making up for the learning gap is a serious effort. And thanks to some federal funds, we're able to do things like hire 10 additional tutors for reading and math and start to address that learning loss. I would also say that it's equally important to understand the problems and the lacks in diversity, equity, and inclusion issues. I think that having a comfortable space for our students where they feel safe and protected is extremely important to learning. And so the whole school environment is something that we can continue to improve in order that students can take advantage of the education activities that they're being provided.
Thank you. This has been an excellent discussion of our schools. And now we will have a 2-minute closing, and we will start with Ms. Katzenberger.
Thank you. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be up here and to, with my fellow candidates and with you, Maria, and to address some of the questions from our community. I think that is the thing that I'm most excited about in terms of getting on the school board is create new opportunities for people to communicate with each other. That's my background. That's what I think cuts through some of the divisions that we've experienced. And I think it can be frustrating for folks if they come to a school board meeting and they can make a statement, but it's not set up for people to have a back and forth conversation. I think we need to create those opportunities if that's not the right forum. I think that will help pull things off of social media and get people to actually connect with each other. I'm a proud parent of 2 girls in these schools, and being a parent in the last 2 years has been a transformative experience. I think it's difficult to understand what it's actually like to have kids go through all the different learning models that we've experienced recently without actually having them in your living room or in your living room every other day or, back in school with masks. I think that kind of hands-on day-to-day experience is something that we should have more of on our school board because it's just a different perspective and a fresh perspective that I think our community is ready for. I've very much enjoyed all the service opportunities and volunteering I've done with the schools, including chairing the school levy campaign in 2020. It helped me meet even more people and learn more about what's on everybody's minds And I want to bring that knowledge and that experience to the school board and represent the other parents in this community who want their children to be safe and healthy and succeed. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Ms. Shaughnessy, your 2-minute closing.
Thank you. Well, the Lakewood City Schools clearly face challenges and opportunities to maintain a safe in-person learning environment, to address learning loss. We have some other challenges. Our schools and community are challenged by the emotional toll of the pandemic. Isolation and anxiety of the last year and a half have placed a strain on even the most solid relationships and have eroded the concept of action for the common good. The Ohio Legislature challenges the authority of our local school districts, and mask mandates, disposal of school property, and curriculum options are all threatened. We can meet these challenges and pursue the opportunities for growth as a system that will enable our children to thrive. And so to this end, I support a strategic planning initiative involving our collective bargaining units, administrators, students, parents, and community members. Expansion of our current early childhood program with child care options, continued integration of our diversity, equity, and inclusion task force recommendations into all levels and functions of the schools, including curriculum, professional development, administrative services, and policy, and increased wellness services and family outreach. I believe that in my years on the board, I've demonstrated the ability to tackle difficult decisions and embrace opportunity. I'm able to work with others without rancor while maintaining personal integrity and perspective. And I will continue to base each decision on the impact that our actions will have on the lives of the children in our care. Will our actions enable them to feel safe in school, to realize their value, and fulfill their potential and have confidence in their futures? Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now, Mr. Faber.
Thank you. We get through this next year, we get to a steadier, more normal position as we were in the past, so that we can continue moving forward with expansion and further engagement of our community and kids. One of the biggest things that I am an advocate of, and was having this discussion very seriously before we got hit with the pandemic, was an all-day program for working parents, fully coordinated with the educational day of the year. So from the morning through the school day and into the evening, we have one coordinated program for working parents that children can be there all day, and their before and after school program is coordinated with the school day. Our challenge continues to be our state government. We have a state government that is not friendly to public education. Money is diverted. The unconstitutional funding plan has still not been addressed. As we go forward, we are involved in a strategic planning process now, and we'll continue to do that as we go forward. We have a wonderfully inclusive district that we have to do the best we can for all children. We have some of the most advanced students and some of the most challenged students. We have over 30 different languages in our schools. Clearly, our school district has children whose roots are all over the world, and we do very well with them. We offer more programming, more choices of courses, more activities than virtually any other school district around. Going forward, we need to continue and expand that wherever we can. And I believe I have the experience and the time on the board to keep us going in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank all 3 candidates for your time and your thoughtful answers. And thank you to the audience members for submitting such great questions. And now we may applaud the candidates. If I could have the 6 City Council at-large candidates come forward. Thank you.
Hopefully that'll sit.
Sarah, you're at the second seat and Heather the first seat. And Laura, you're right here. Okay, thank you.
Bryce's not gonna do this now.
It's a long name, I guess.
Yeah.
Does that work?
Yeah, that works.
Did it? Oh, that helps if you take it over. All right, Mark, thanks for your patience.
When you're, right now, when it's red like that, it's hot. So in order to cut back on feedback, you're going to tap that. And then, yeah, right.
Thank you, and welcome to the forum this evening. As I did with the school board, I had someone draw names, and Laura Rodriguez Carbone was the lucky person picked to go first, and so she will have 1 minute for her opening statement.
Okay, it's on. I can barely see the red light here, so my apologies. Good evening, everyone. I'm Laura Rodriguez Carbone. I'm a candidate for Lakewood City Council at Large. I want to thank Maria, the League of Women Voters, and the Lakewood Chamber of Commerce for putting on such a great event. Thank you for all the important work you do to empower and protect democracy. Just as part of the League's mission is to empower voters, I'm running because I believe government should empower its residents. The City of Lakewood and City Council can empower more people with more opportunities, such as housing policies that allow seniors using financial assistance to age in place, traffic calming that allows children and adults to walk safely, and taking advantage of communications tools at the city's disposal to help residents navigate power outages, access city services, and obtain public information.
Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez Carbone. And now we will go to Mr. Schneider for his 1 minute opening. Now try it.
Should light up red.
I am Mark Schneider, and I live in the Meridian Building in the Gold Coast. Happy to see some of my fellow Gold Coasters here this evening. And I've spent over the last 20 years of my career in public service. I currently serve at the local level as a municipal prosecuting attorney and assistant law director. Prior to that, I had the good fortune to be able to serve as a state representative, creating the laws and serving in the General Assembly for our state. And before that, I began my career as a Cuyahoga assistant prosecuting attorney in the Major Trial Division, where I handled capital murder and child victim cases. I want to bring all of that experience to task on our city council to work on keeping our neighborhoods safe, keeping up good city services without raising taxes, and keeping up good services for our senior citizens so they could afford to remain in their homes and a vibrant part of this community. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and the Chamber of Commerce for hosting us this evening.
Thank you. And now we will turn to Mr. Baker.
Thank you to League of Women Voters and Chamber of Commerce for putting on this great forum. It's nice to be back in a room with folks speaking about ideas for our democracy. I'm Kyle Baker, and I'm running for Lakewood City Council at Large. A little background about me: I grew up in Lakewood, went to the Lakewood City Schools, went away to college and law school, came back to town, worked for a law firm, really enjoyed the work I did in construction and development law, but felt the pull of public service and went in-house to Cleveland Metro Parks, where I am our Director of Real Estate and Senior Assistant Legal Counsel. So I do all of our land acquisition, land development, and capital construction. On the Lakewood side, I'm proud to be on Planning Commission for 6 years. I was chair the last year I was on Planning Commission. So I've been deeply involved in implementing the community vision here in Lakewood. I was also president of the Lakewood Rangers Education Foundation, where I gave back to the schools and really helped elevate the current students in the schools. And really looking forward to serve Lakewood. I've lived here as a kid, as a young adult, and as a parent.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Now, Mr. Bullock.
Good evening. Thank you. First of all, I think I'm not on. Let me try again. Good evening. Public service is my profession and calling for 25 years. It's rooted in my upbringing in church and family to treat all with fairness and dignity, to give opportunity equally to all, and to make our nation a more perfect union by bringing justice to society and justice to the earth. In Lakewood, that has meant for me 13 years of dedicated work to make this special community thrive and grow, and it's working. Progress is palpable in Lakewood all around us. From stable budgets to a strong housing market to major interest by major developers in coming to our community, what we've been doing has been bearing fruit. I'm the most experienced council member, and I've served throughout Lakewood's turnaround and growth. I'm responsive to residents. I return calls promptly. In fact, I solved a graffiti problem today in a neighborhood, and I've been on the front lines of innovation like public art, walkability, and clean energy. This helped. In Lakewood, we're doing our part, and we're leading the way.
Thank you, Mr. Bullock. Ms. Keppel.
Hi, I'm Lakewood City Councilwoman Sarah Keppel. I began my lifelong career in public service at Lakewood Public Library. As I moved through my career in libraries and then starting my own business, the common theme was helping prepare folks for 21st century careers through technology education. That background in technology came in handy when I was unanimously chosen for council in February of 2020, and then promptly helped us move to remote meetings so that we could be first in line for funding for first responders, help push out rent relief, and help our small businesses. I did that through initiating our express parking. I also serve on the ADA task force, working to make sure all of our public properties are accessible. I hope to continue to innovate for you and working to make all of Lakewood more accessible, equitable, and sustainable. Thank you for hosting us tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Rader.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Tristan. Glad to see everyone here tonight. I really just want to say thank you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for elevating the civil discourse in our city and our society. Thank you to the building thank you to the Chamber of Commerce for all the work you do in our community. And thank you for all of you who came out today. And for everyone that came out on primary day on September 14th. I'm honored that you voted in that election, and I'm asking you to vote again on November 2nd. You chose our campaign as #1. Thank you for that. And I don't think that was without reason either. Back in 2017 when I ran on the same principles, the same 3 pillars of economic justice, equity, diversity, and also the environment. Those are things that we've worked on, proposals with council, with the mayor's administration, with state and local government, and we're going to continue to do that work, engaging you throughout the process, moving into this next 4 years. So thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. And now we will move forward with questions, and you have 1 minute to respond. We will start with Mr. Schneider first. Could you talk about the rising cost of housing in Lakewood? And this questioner says, in addition to purchasing a home in our community becoming prohibitive to many, the county property tax assessment recently came out with another round of significant increases. Are there measures that you think Lakewood government could make to help with this sharp increase for our current residents?
Affordability of housing is one of the greatest concerns that I hear about going door to door. Obviously, we're here on the eve of more bad news in that most of us have gotten a property tax assessment indicating that once again, taxes are going up. The people who could least afford these difficult housing prices and decisions are our senior citizens. I've talked to scores of them throughout the community. There definitely is a feeling that they feel they're being priced out of our community and taxed out of our community. And they have a basis for that. I think there are programs we ought to implement. We ought to, #1, insist on affordable housing as a component of any new construction in our community. Secure microloans for particularly seniors so they could upgrade their property. Also, use our COVID relief money to defer some of the sewer infrastructure costs that are going to be assessed to keep housing more affordable.
Thank you, Mr. Schneider. Mr. Baker.
Yes, affordable housing and the tax issue are a little bit different, but on the affordable housing front, Lakewood does have a diversity of housing stock, which actually allows for different income levels a little bit, where, you know, a house in Birdtown is not the same as a house in Clifton Park. However, I think there are programs that Lakewood could implement. For example, on the property tax side, most of that increased revenue goes to the city. It's about $4 million they project. So that's money that the city could and city council could earmark towards affordable housing issues. Now, whether that's tax relief for seniors or micro loans and working with Lakewood Alive to have seniors upgrade their homes so that they could age in place. I know first floor bathrooms and accessibility is a big issue for seniors, and we have vertical housing stock. So there are lots of things that we can do as a city with some of that increased revenue. But just because your property valuation went up 30% doesn't mean your taxes are going to go up 30%. It's a little bit of a nuanced issue that we can get into in a longer discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Mr. Bullock.
Thank you. Strong home values are also a strength. There are many homes in Lakewood that still have deferred maintenance, still need to be updated. And when you have stronger home value, you have an easier time going to the bank and financing an update to your kitchen or your bathroom and modernizing our classic 100-year-old homes for another century, our second century of life. That said, diversity has been Lakewood's part of our DNA, and affordable rental units where young people come, get their feet wet, and then first-time home buyers find their home in Lakewood. That's been part of our DNA. We want to preserve that. We've got a multi-part strategy already in place to help people afford staying in their homes. We've got about 50 new affordable units coming.
Thank you, Mr. Bullock. Ms. Keppel.
Thank you. So as a member of the Housing Planning and Development Committee, this is an issue that I deal with a lot. We have been working, and I voted to incentivize in some of our new developments for those developers to put in affordable and accessible housing. I think that accessibility point is an important one, as a lot of our seniors and folks with disabilities struggle to age in place. The city does have some programs available to help folks adapt to their homes through zero to low interest loans. I think we can do a better job of publicizing those and making sure folks know about that, and publicizing things and getting them out to the community is something I'm very good at. So I'll definitely be working on that in the future, as well as continuing to incentivize more affordable and accessible housing.
Thank you. Mr. Rader.
Thank you. And yes, correct. I mean, affordable housing is one of the #1 issues that we're facing right now. We do have an eight-step strategy to deal with affordable housing. It needs to be developed and adapted to this new climate of climbing home prices. And yes, people are being priced out, particularly seniors. And one thing we found just this week, I met with the planning department, that only 329 seniors in our city are taking advantage of the homestead exemption. We could do a much better job at actually getting the word out about programs that even exist currently. Of that pandemic money, we got $50 million. We put 1.6 immediately. We're one of the first cities to make a decision to use that money to put it directly into rent relief programs for our residents. Over 500 residents are being funded through some of that to stay in their homes through the pandemic. We've already considered putting another $2 million into that, but that's a temporary solution. What we need is people in the community to come together. We need a task force that's going to focus on affordable housing, and it includes renters, and it includes landlords and homeowners and seniors, and we need to focus on this. Bring the smart minds around.
Thank you, Mr. Rader. Ms. Rodriguez-Carbone.
Thank you. I would echo what Mr. Rader said. The homestead exemption is a really great example of programs that are already in place that our residents can benefit from, but they have no idea what it is, how to apply, or how to navigate the system. I think it's important that folks on council go the extra mile to publicize these programs, but also to kind of help folks through the process. I also echo support for the ARPA funds being put toward keeping people in their homes. The pandemic is probably the greatest threat we have to our businesses, our schools. So it's important that our community stay intact as much as we can throughout and after this pandemic.
Thank you. The next question, and we'll start with Mr. Baker. Do you support the City of Lakewood obtaining 100% of its energy from renewable sources? And what specific policies do you prioritize if you do support this initiative?
So I think there's two questions there. One is municipal energy, and I believe the City of Lakewood has made steps to go to 100% renewable. The other is the larger carbon footprint of our city, which is our businesses and our homes. So when I look at the city code on green energy, I see a whole section on wind energy, which is not scalable to homes. And when I go on the city's website and I look up how to do a solar panel on my home, it's a dead link from 5 years ago. So when you think about really reducing our carbon footprint, it's about having a model building code, certified contractors, on having all that information accessible to Lakewood homeowners and Lakewood business owners and Lakewood landlords so that they can then switch to a more renewable energy source, because that's the larger carbon footprint in our community. So part of that takes reaching out to trade groups, reaching out to contractors, reaching out to co-ops, and then also working with the building department, and the planning department to understand what is a model building code to do so that we can push that forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bullock.
Thank you. Yes, I support clean energy. In fact, I was one of the main authors of it, working with some of my colleagues here to move towards 100% clean power for city facilities and solar panels on the roof. In fact, I also am authoring electric vehicle equipment for our vehicle fleet in our garage. Clean fuels and clean vehicles is a whole nother branch. And if you think of the trash trucks that come through our neighborhood, those should be zero emission, delivering clean air, not diesel particulates. So it's a big topic. I actually think what Kyle just said is right on, and there's a National League of Cities Soul Smart program I'd like to see us get a certification in. Only a few Ohio cities have. Also, aggregation. We participate in NOPEC. NOPEC right now doesn't provide as a default option clean power. It could and it should. It's a complicated topic, but the short version is Lakewood really ought to lead the conversation and require clean power.
Thank you, Mr. Bullock. Ms. Keppel.
Thank you. Yes, so we are fortunate in, thanks to some of the work set out by my colleagues, that our municipal buildings are 100% clean energy. We can expand on that to our fleet. So we do have solar panels. We could be charging our vehicle fleet for both of our refuse and recycling as well as our safety forces. That would take a great deal of carbon out of the air. We could incentivize as well with our new construction for that to be built to be carbon neutral. And as my colleague pointed out, there's a lot we can be doing more with NOPEC, and they could be pushing us farther to bring clean energy into Lakewood homes.
Thank you. Mr. Rader.
Thank you. Yes, of course, 100%. I'm 1,000% behind the 100% renewable commitments that we made for 2035 for our community. We've made strides here, as my colleagues mentioned, for the city, but we could do more. Community choice aggregation is absolutely the first and best way to do that. But really, when you look at this holistically, what we need, there's a lot of things we should and can and need to be doing. We need to rely on best practices, regional partnerships, and we need a climate action plan. And that's something that's actually in the works right now, something that I put in the budget a couple years ago. We're finally getting to developing that plan now. Happy it's happening. Once we have that roadmap to the future, it's going to lay out the best and highest use and most impactful things we could be doing for our tax dollars so that we're actually making the most progress as fast as possible towards 100% renewable energy, not just for the city building, but for all of Lakewood, and really lead the state. I want to be a leader in the state on clean energy here in Lakewood, and we are on that path, and I'm really proud of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rodriguez-Carbone.
Thank you. I echo that sentiment, Mr. Rader, and I also believe that I think the city can be doing more to empower residents to also reduce their carbon footprint as well at home. I think from an infrastructure point of view, we can do more to improve our public transportation options, as well as maximizing walkability and bikeability, and also to help residents learn more about solar panel options for their own homes and available programming on the regional level with partners in Cuyahoga County government to be able to do that. So I think that renewable energy is also, it's a great commitment to make as a city, but I also think that we need to expand those opportunities to our residents as well.
Thank you. And Mr. Schneider.
Thank you. When we talk about renewable energy, we're really talking about the environment. We all come from different neighborhoods, but we have the commonality that we breathe the same air, we drink the same water. The greatest asset that we have in this region is Lake Erie that is right out our windows. We need to be working both on our carbon footprint, our green infrastructure to make sure our fleets are moving towards renewable energy, to make sure that our buildings and our campuses are powered by renewable energy and energy efficient. We also need to be working on our gray infrastructure, and that means taking the difficult tasks that have not been faced to the extent that they need to be to replace our infrastructure for our sewer and our water plants. The commingling of our sewers in our stormwater and sanitary systems is polluting our lake, and we need to be more green. It's time for action, not just talk.
Thank you. Mr. Bullock, you will start off with this question. How do you propose the city address parking, both street and off-street parking, traffic flow, and community safety?
Thank you. Parking is always going to be tough for Lakewood. If you think of it, it's a good problem to have. People want to be here, so it's a compliment, really. We do have parking. What we've done to ease bottlenecks is to signpost and find the city lots, for example, across from Barrio, except Barrio is so darn successful that you can't ever have enough parking spots. That's a step, and scheduling better what we do have helps. But when we have a new development in the former Lakewood Hospital site, that'll have a parking deck. It'll be important to get that sized correctly, not too big, not too small, but nail the proper number. That will help. The other part of the question is traffic safety, really, and traffic calming is something that many of us have worked on. I initiated that years ago, and we've got 2 streets. We need to get to 12 streets, really, but that's a way to engineer the streets to be naturally slower and safer so you're not just relying on the police.
Thank you, Mr. Bullock. Ms. Keppel.
Thank you. So parking is an issue when you live in a desirable city, and we do. So as I've worked with a lot of our small businesses, we sort of balance out a lot of the parking issues. So as I mentioned, I initiated and got going curbside express parking, so you can pull up and get your takeout order or your to-go order from a merchant. So that's using some of that and removing some of that congestion. We can also do more we can add signage. A lot of our merchants have asked for that, to expand our signage for those municipal lots so folks know where they are. And we can also do more with the payment systems. Right now, those are very confusing to out-of-town guests, and I think they end up taking up street parking rather than parking in municipal lots. So we can update and modernize those systems, and that will help turn over those spots.
Thank you. Mr. Rader.
Thank you very much. On the parking front, yes, I think as Ms. Keppel mentioned, a desirable city means a lot of people want to park. And I've always advocated for a very smart, data-driven approach to how we do our parking situations here, but always with an emphasis on putting our residents first, making sure that people here who live here can get to the spots, and they need the spots, particularly some of our renters that live in the downtown corridors, that they're able to have resident parking during hours they need it. And that's the way I've advocated, and I'll continue to advocate for that. First and foremost. On traffic, we're very fortunate that we have a traffic calming program. If you go to our website, you can look it up, and you can actually submit your street to be studied if you believe that speeding is an issue on your street. And I highly encourage you to go to our website, check it out, and submit your street if you believe speeding is an issue. We want to analyze that, use data-driven approach to make sure we get the right traffic calming measures in the right places to make Lakewood basically as safe as possible. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rodriguez Carbone.
Thank you. Some years ago, Lakewood used to be known as a city where if you sped, you would get pulled over. I think it has quickly over the years, or maybe not as quickly, lost that reputation. So I support, increasing enforcement of speed limits through our neighborhoods. It is probably the #1 issue I hear from residents when I am out in the community speaking with them. They are concerned about the safety of their kids playing outside. They're concerned about, elderly family members as well. In addition to that, I think going back to maybe looking at ways we can reestablish our community circulator to make people less dependent on the need to park, I think might be a good way to go to reduce some of our reliance on cars in Lakewood. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Schneider.
I'm proud to be endorsed by the Fraternal Order of Police Lodge 25, which represents our police officers. So when we talk about safety, between my background and that endorsement, it tells you that I know a little something. As for parking, there's a 3-point plan. Number 1, more visible signage to alert people to parking and the regulations. Number 2, more rigid enforcement. And number 3, appropriate parking as a component of any new construction. That hasn't always been the case in the past. When we talk about traffic flow, traffic enforcement, and safety, we're really talking about supporting our police officers in a way that they are not supported today, with giving them the appropriate staffing, giving them the appropriate training, giving them the appropriate equipment that they need to keep us safe. These are very difficult times to be a police officer, very difficult times to recruit a police officer and to retain a police officer. We need to be proactive in our approach. We need to have a dialogue with our police, and we need to give them what they need to keep us safe.
Thank you. Mr. Baker.
Yes, this is an issue near dear to my heart. My boys are going to have to cross 90 to get to Hayes School in a couple of years, and that's gives us heartburn. But when you talk about parking, you need to engage the residents and business of each block to understand what issues that they have. I think we need to increase accessible parking for folks with disabilities. I can walk a couple extra blocks, but we should save those spots for folks with mobility issues. As it comes to traffic, I agree increased enforcement would help. Also complete streets. So when we redesign streets, these are our communities. They are not just pass-throughs, right? So we need to make sure that folks, when we design our streets, we design them so folks go slower, right? Because that speed is the issue, right? So I live near McKinley and the 90 exit. People fly through there. So if we design our streets in a way that people don't feel comfortable doing that, then they won't. And there's lots of other things you can do in a longer conversation about planning our grid and our streets to make sure that they're accessible for everyone, not just cars.
Thank you. Ms. Keppel, you will lead off this next question. Small businesses are still struggling due to COVID. What should the city do to help our small businesses survive and thrive?
This is a perfect question for me. So I've been working very closely with the small businesses. I'm a member of the Small Business Task Force. I've organized a restaurant roundtable to work with our restaurants who are still really reeling and have a long road to recovery. One of the things we can do, as I've proposed in this upcoming budget, is to establish a local delivery system to help folks shop local and support our local businesses. So if it was just as easy to shop local as it is to shop on Amazon, wouldn't you do it? So if you could go online and shop at those local businesses, get your food delivery, that would take out some of the costs that are associated with third parties like Grubhub and Uber Eats, and put that back in the restaurants' pockets, which comes back to the city in tax incentives and comes to you in the form of increased services. So that's just one particular idea, but I've got lots more.
Thank you. Mr. Rader.
What she said. I think that's she's, and I'm proud to say that I voted for Sarah Keppel to be on council. She's been our consummate authority on small businesses, but it's certainly something that we focus on a lot. And in fact, Mr. Favor mentioned this in his remarks about the school board. It's something we've had to learn through the pandemic, because we have to respond faster, right? As a body, we have to kind of get more nimble. And that's one thing we did in the pandemic. One of the first things we did before we got any federal money or anything, we actually took our own funds, our economic development funds, and put them towards a rent relief program for our businesses that kept our businesses open, and they were able to open the doors after the busted up. Over 120, 130 odd some businesses somewhere in there were able to open their doors. I want to continue to see that nimble approach to what we do. We have an excellent planning department. We have an awesome Chamber of Commerce. The resources they need, they know they can reach out to City Hall and that will have an able voice. And also I should give a shout out to Lakewood Alive, who's been the great ringleader of a lot of this and wrangler of a lot of the businesses in our community. We want to make sure we support them as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rodriguez-Carbone.
Thank you. I'm actually very fortunate in that my brother just became a small business owner of color in Lakewood. So for our family, Lakewood has always been a city of opportunity. I want to see those opportunities grow for small business owners. I had proposed that due to the pandemic, which has certainly deeply affected all small businesses in Lakewood, we need to act. We need to establish an economic recovery office. We need to get businesses in the room. We need to understand what their needs are. And we do have funding from the American Rescue Plan. We need to give them what they need to be able to weather this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Schneider.
As a member of the Cuyahoga County Group Plan Commission, I work on the development, funding, and planning of public square and the downtown malls. In the State House, I worked with over 300 local businesses on their needs and how they could succeed in very difficult times. In addition to that, I've served as co-chairman and a 3-year member of the Citizens Advisory Committee, where we've recommended investments in our small businesses and the programs that our city offers. I know something about small businesses, and I am a small businessman as well. We need a dialogue with groups like Lakewood Alive's Downtown Business Alliance. We need to be talking to the Chamber of Commerce about what their needs are, what we could do. I think most small businessmen that I've talked to have talked about a more streamlined system of city departments, less regulation for the sake of regulation, making sure that we have smart programs that they could take advantage of and that will help them succeed with their plans.
Thank you. Mr. Baker.
Yes, so small businesses are the heart of Lakewood, and I'll echo what other people have said as it relates to supporting them, right? So using some of the COVID relief funds to help support innovative programs like food delivery or other delivery options. I know Beechwood did that during the pandemic for some of their restaurants, and it was a pretty successful pilot. The other thing is business is synergistic, right? So I drive down Detroit Avenue, I see a hole in the ground where the hospital used to be. That used to be a site that not only produced $2 million in income taxes for the city, but also produced lots of foot traffic for Aladdin's and for the other restaurants around there, for the businesses around there. The fact that that site isn't being developed, I hope we hear something more from it, affects the other small businesses around it because their growth inhibits other growth around other people. So I think that's one thing we should really focus on. You know, and also just to the point of regulations, you know, I think when COVID hit, I was on Planning Commission, we really helped push outdoor dining expansion to allow restaurants to have higher capacities because of some of the COVID restrictions. These are things I think we need to continue to explore to help those small businesses.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Mr. Bullock.
Thank you. Flexible outdoor dining, flexible express parking. Kyle just touched on that and played an important role when he was serving the Planning Commission for several of those, and so did several of my colleagues. So taking the rules that we have now, but making them flexible so that they can, the businesses can operate successfully under the new normal. Councilwoman Keppel's proposal is a very good one. Find a low margin online vendor for all of our restaurants so that they're not paying too much to these national online tools. ARPA reserve is something we've talked about. The city still has 20+ million. I'm going to advocate that we reserve a significant chunk of that. We don't know how Delta variant's going to go. We don't know if there's another variant that's coming. We have a few years before we need to spend all of that 20 million, so it's prudent that we reserve it for business relief. And then finally, Lakewood Alive has done a very good job of helping to get funds into people's hands, whether from the city and from First Federal of Lakewood.
Thank you, Mr. Bullock. I believe we have time for one more question, and we will have Mr. Rader take this one. What can be done about the big hole that Lakewood Hospital used to sit in?
So, I did this sort of facetiously, but I did it also to get people's attention. If you go to lakewoodpit.com, it'll direct you directly to our website where there's an update as of August about the progress and the development of that. We've got a term sheet developed with Casto, they're a developer, and soon, within the next couple of weeks, we should have an actual first draft of an agreement. That will actually highlight, it'll be mixed use, it'll be mostly housing, residential, 230 units, somewhere around there. And it will be underground parking. It's going to be part of this component of this plan. So the pieces and parts are there. You're soon going to see this plan roll out. The administration and our planning department have been working very hard behind the scenes on this. Soon it'll be very public, and then before all our boards and commissions, all of you will have a chance to give your input and insight. We'll make sure you're all invited, and look forward to the next phase of that site's development process. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rodriguez-Carbone.
Thank you. I echo the sentiments of Mr. Rader. I think being able to pivot with Casto was very fortunate, considering that most development across the country, most buildings stopped because of the pandemic. So now we have an opportunity to develop a space that's really representative of the needs of our community. And I'm looking forward to engaging in public meetings to figure out what that is. And I definitely think that the residents deserve the opportunity to see the new design, to look at the timelines, and kind of imagine what the new building and amenities would be like in their neighborhood.
Thank you. Mr. Schneider.
6 years ago, I sat at this dais and we had great discussion about the proposal to replace the Lakewood Hospital with an outpatient treatment center and what we would be doing with that remaining property. Here we are now, and one of the greatest things that I hear about at the doors is what is happening with the so-called pit that used to be this hospital site. We're hearing great intentions and great proposals, but we've been here before. It takes leadership and experience from council to actually see a development through. We need to make sure that we have a development agreement that is rock solid to hold a developer to its task, not pay a developer hundreds of thousands of dollars to walk away from our site. It's going to take leadership. It's going to take experience. I have that experience holding developers to task, both in my role as a state representative and now as an assistant law director. That's what it's going to take to develop that site.
Thank you. Mr. Baker.
Yes, so the original plan for the site was a good one. I was involved with it when I was on Planning Commission, had a mix of uses. The fact of the matter is you're going to need a decent office component in that development to get the lost income tax revenue that you would have had from the Lakewood Hospital site, which is, like I said, between 1.5 and 2 million. So a mixed-use development would be important. Casto was a good developer. But I look at, some of the incentives that we've given to other developers in the past 2 years in this town, some tax abatements, some TIFs. So the city owns the land here. The city is giving the developer the land for $1. So we need to think long and hard about what public incentives we give to this developer to develop that site, because it relates to the first question, which is the property tax burden upon us as property owners here in Lakewood, where if we defer their land value, then we pay more as a community. And if we do that, we better be getting what we want out of that site. So I think I can bring experience to council to help with that.
Thank you. Mr. Bullock.
Thank you. The development agreement is about to be talked about publicly. City Council hasn't heard it. We've just heard from the mayor's team that it's imminent. That'll start 9 months, probably 6, 9, 12 months of public dialogue. So everybody's invited. What I want to see is the 13 original development criteria that we had for the previous developer held to, and that includes mixed use, economic development, the jobs potential, historic preservation for the Curtis Block, a public square, high quality urban infill design. We want to go for the gold. We want to go for platinum, because this is a once in 50-year or longer opportunity to make a beautiful downtown plaza that can stimulate our economy. We'll get it done. More to come.
Thank you. Ms. Keppel.
Thank you. So I think, we lucked into a little bit of a opportunity here, even though I know it's hard to see that space. But now that we're coming out of the pandemic, we get a chance to look at this with fresh eyes. So we want to make sure that we have outdoor space that benefits the community whose land this is now, and that we have a mix of private-public partnership in that space. We want to make sure that that space benefits the residents and the business owners around it, so that the housing put in there is both affordable and accessible, as we talked about before. So any incentives would require that, and that would be built in. And we want to make sure that the community is engaged, and that is something that I have shown myself to be dedicated to and will continue to do.
Thank you. And thank each candidate for all of your thoughtful answers. We will now wrap this up and give each candidate a 2-minute closing. We will start with Mr. Schneider.
If anybody is looking for the same old, and feels the status quo is, well, good enough, then you ought to look past me and look at another candidate. If you have higher expectations for this community, this place that we call home, that we're so proud of, then you ought to pay a little closer attention to what I have to say in this campaign. I'm not here for the status quo. I'm here to shake things up and bring a level of experience and dedication and leadership that this council hasn't seen in some amount of time. When I made Lakewood my home years and years and years ago, I was proud of the neighborhoods we have, downtown, uptown, Birdtown, the West End. I was proud to be 5 minutes walk away from any park. I was proud to have the culture, diversity, and unique businesses and people in this community. Lakewood has given so much to me, some of my best friends, some of the greatest opportunities. It's my duty to give back. And that's why I've given back, by volunteering for a diverse number of organizations like St. Luke's Church, the Chamber of Commerce, Lakewood Alive, Lakewood Rocky River Sunrise Rotary Club, different organizations that have tried to improve our community. We owe something to our community. When I knock on doors, people are starving for leadership and experience. When a developer promises you the moon and the sun and doesn't deliver and leaves an open pit in the center of our downtown, you need experience and leadership to see us through. When utilities take a 1-week project and drag it out for the whole summer, disrupting your street, you need experience and leadership to do something about that. And when the EPA leans on us about pricing out our infrastructure, you need experience and leadership on council. That is why I'm running. That's why I'm asking for your vote. Thank you for having me this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Schneider. Mr. Baker.
Thank you for everyone for coming tonight. This has been really excellent. In my closing, I'd just like to say that I owe Lakewood a debt of gratitude. I'm the only person on this in this dais that graduated from Lakewood City Schools as a Lakewood City School student. I'd be the only member of council that was a Lakewood City School student. So this community has given me so much. I come from a blue-collar background, the youngest of 7 kids, first in my family to go away to college. And when I think about that, the base and the opportunity that Lakewood gave me, I knew when I graduated from college and law school that I would come back here and raise my family. Because in my eyes, it's a social contract for Lakewood, right? So when I look at my experience and how I can help council, the work that I do on at Cleveland Metro Parks, I've helped preserve over 1,000 acres of green space for Northeast Ohio. If you look at Edgewater Park and you see the Wendy Park Bridge, the Red Line Greenway, and the Whiskey Island Connector, those are projects that 5 years ago were just an idea when Cleveland Metro Parks applied for those grants. We did not own any of the real estate on it. We did not have any construction drawings. So within 5 years, we went from getting funded from the federal government to acquiring the land, developing the plans, building it, and delivering it on time during a pandemic so that the folks in this community could enjoy it. So that's the type of pace that I work at Cleveland Metro Parks, and that's the type of pace I'd like to bring to City Hall. And when I look at council and I look at the other candidates in this race, a lot of fine backgrounds, but I don't see any real estate development or construction experience. And as we've talked about, the giant pit in the middle of our city, that is a transformational and once-in-a-generation opportunity to remake our downtown. I think about it as our Tower City, right, in downtown Cleveland. There used to be a ton of little buildings around Tower City, and then now it's the hub of downtown. So we have an opportunity to do something in this community that we can be proud of, and that my kids, when they have kids, can be proud of as well. So thank you all for the time. This has been wonderful.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Mr. Bullock.
Thank you. I want to circle back to affordable housing because I ran out of time for that answer. Certainly, we need to make the tools we have in place work even more effectively. We are going to have 56 new affordable housing units come on with 2 major developments that will be built in the next year. We have been developing a small but meaningful number of affordable housing units throughout the city. And Lakewood Alive, once again, I'm on the board of Lakewood Alive, support them very strongly in their work to help property owners afford to stay in their homes with weatherization grants and upgrading your furnace when it's inefficient. There are ways that we can lower household costs, and that's another way of getting at the problem. Finally, we need to do some advocacy to the federal government, the Department of HUD, where the formulas that they give for people who qualify for the assistance are kind of one-size-fits-all for the region. It's really too small for Lakewood. We need to go do some advocacy and get that adjusted and increased. I'll close by thanking, once again, the Chamber and League of Women Voters, and also this fine group of candidates. I said in another forum, I wish we could expand City Council and include everybody, because I think this is an uncommonly high-quality group that's run today, and I would consider it an honor to serve with any and all. One of the most meaningful and progressive things we can do is to make a special place like Lakewood thrive and grow and be functional. On City Council, probably 2/3 of our time are helping solve neighborhood problems, filling potholes, trimming trees so the stop sign can be legible, and make our wonderful city functional. It's my honor and privilege to do that work, and I've, as energized as I was when I started years ago, I think that we've been successful. There's more work to do, and I look forward
Thank you,
to
Mr.
doing it.
Bullock. Ms. Keppel.
Thank you. Almost 2 years ago, when members of this community encouraged me to apply for the appointment on council, I felt called to serve then as I do now because I have a unique combination of experience as a longtime public servant, as a librarian, as a community organizer, and as a small business owner. That unique blend also includes raising a family in Lakewood. I know what it's like to try to balance all of those things, and that's part of why I've worked so hard for you these last 2 years. I'd love to continue to serve for you. I would love to continue to innovate and bring that creative experience and that experience of proactively reaching out to you and engaging you in your local government. So that is something that's very passionate. I have a big passion about. I believe in accessibility. As I mentioned, I serve in the ADA task force, but not just making sure that our public spaces are accessible, but making sure that your government is accessible to you. I've worked to expand our public comment, including e-comment, live streaming with closed captioning, and we'd like to continue that work to make sure that all who want to be involved in their government can be. So I hope you'll give me that opportunity, and I look forward to continuing to serving you.
Thank you, Ms. Keppel. Mr. Rader.
Thank you, and I think I'm last, so I'll try not to take the whole time. We can get moving on to the next thing. But I really do appreciate everyone coming out and hearing from us today. One thing that I pride myself in is my constituent services. Everybody knows I have one phone number. It's my cell phone. It's this phone right here. Call me if you need me. I want to be your connection to government. I have been the last 4 years. I think that's why we've had such success so far in this campaign, is just being available to be your voice, eyes and ears here at City Hall. And again, I thank you for that opportunity. Lakewood has faced a lot of challenges, but we've grown. For the first time in my lifetime, we have more people in Lakewood this year than last, right? That's phenomenal. But with that growth comes challenges, and as we grow, we want to make sure Lakewood stays a place welcoming and accepting of all people, and that we're continuing to promote diversity. And I think one way that I could really live this, and I think it was one of the endorsement meetings I was in speaking, and they said, how are you going to support people of color rising through the ranks and being part of government? And I thought, you know what? I really need to start doing that more. And that's one reason why today and before this, but some of you might not know, I'm supporting Laura Rodriguez Carbone in addition to myself for this race, because we do need highly qualified people that have different experiences in our community than our own. And I think with her as an addition to City Council, we will succeed. We'll continue to succeed. We've been doing phenomenal work representing you, and I think we can continue that work into the future. So thank you so much to the League of Women Voters, to the Chamber of Commerce, and everyone else putting on this event today. You're invaluable to our community in elevating this discourse. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Rader. And last but certainly not least, Ms. Rodriguez Carbone.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Rader, for such great comments. I sincerely also support you as well. And everything you said about responsiveness, accessibility, these are also things that I, as a public servant for nearly 22 years, have been fortunate enough to be able to do in this community as well as communities all across the U.S. As I look out, I see a wave of masks. So I am, for the past 18 months, I've been a member of the White House's COVID response task force. I work across the country. Sometimes I am the last person a patient talks to before being intubated in a hospital. I ran because I know that the continued presence of COVID is going to continue to present challenges, but this community has always consistently risen to the occasion throughout this pandemic. And I think that the best thing we can do is be there for each other. And your city council should be your lifeline. When you need something, you should be able to count on the folks that are representing you. But also that leadership experience on the federal level means that I understand the direct impact local, state, and federal policies have on our community. And I've been an advocate for almost 22 years, and people need people fighting for them. And I'm lucky to be able to have been able to do that for everyone here. So I want to continue that. I want to expand my public service and serve on city council as the first woman and person of color, and to show Northeast Ohio the opportunity and the inclusiveness that I've always known Lakewood to be as a city. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And can we give a round of applause to all these candidates? The minutes. Would the candidates will judge please come to the dais? Thank you. Finelli. Close enough. You say it. I want to get it right. Finelli. That's Finelli. Okay. All right. Okay. Just go ahead. Yes. Yes. They have your.
This thing starts acting up, just grab that one and
Okay.
just single press it on your screen.
Okay. Okay.
Got it. Oh, okay.
if everyone could please have a seat. Are you ladies ready? Thank you all. We're very pleased to have two candidates for Lakewood Municipal Judge. It has been a very, very long time since we've had a new judge in that court, and I can say with certainty that we will have a female judge, which I'm very excited about. First in history. So Ms. Neff won the coin toss, so she gets to start with a 1-minute opening remarks.
I'm thrilled for the opportunity to return to the court where I spent 10 years and loved. For 10 years, I was a judicial magistrate and acting judge, where I decided cases involving traffic, civil, criminal, and housing matters. It's the court where our citizens come to resolve those disputes. I also spent 8 years as a judicial magistrate in the Cuyahoga County Juvenile Court, where I worked with underprivileged families and children, deciding gut-wrenching cases, getting them connected to mental health and addiction, all issues that we see here in our community. For the past 6 years, I've been the court administrator at Juvenile Court, where I oversee court operations, manage a staff of 500, and policy. This is significant experience in a single-judge court like Lakewood. I bring a unique set of experience in public service, including service as a police officer, to the job, and I look forward to serving you. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Finelli.
Thank you, Maria. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sarah Finelli, a candidate for Lakewood Municipal Court Judge. My experience in the law spans 35 years. I've worked and continue to work as a municipal prosecutor, as an attorney in private practice, working on both civil and criminal law, and more importantly, focused on municipal law. What that means is there won't be a case filed in the Lakewood Municipal Court that I haven't seen and handled, likely on both sides of the issue. That experience is unparalleled and current. I've never run for political office before. This is the first time for me. Yet, I have already obtained the endorsements of the Cleveland Plain Dealer, Senator Sherrod Brown, Senators Nikki Antonio and Kenny Yuko. And that's because they see what the Plain Dealer said. I stand out for my experience and knowledge in criminal and civil law for the cases that will come before the court. I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And so we will start the first question with you, Ms. Finelli. If elected, what is a program that is not currently being done in Lakewood Municipal Court that you propose enacting?
Thank you. In terms of a program, I think there's lots of things that could be done here. I don't know that there's a lot that's not being done because Judge Carroll's pretty innovative. However, I think there's some expansion to the diversion program that would make some sense here. I think that the court needs to continue to look at innovating technology. First of all, we all know and agree that the court's technological abilities need to be increased. The judge has picked a new docketing system that makes a big difference to litigants and lawyers and people who come to the court to see what's happening in cases. That has to proceed and keep going. With that system, I think you can also set up an arrangement so that people sometimes don't have to come to court. We've learned in the last 18 months that you don't always have to be here to get cases worked through and completed. So that's one thing I will look to continue so we're ready for anything else that may come in the future.
Thank you. Ms. Neff.
Thank you. One program that I want to implement, and I've mentioned this from the beginning of my candidacy, is a help kiosk. And that's important for access to the court. People have angst when they come to court, and we see a lot of folks who are not represented by attorneys, so they don't get the guidance they need and they're not informed. A help kiosk can give them resources and get them connected to individuals to talk to, such as legal aid and pro bono attorneys that I would work with to help man that kiosk, so that they feel comfortable going through the court and have knowledge about what they're ready to face. Another program I want to implement is data collection. It's critical that we measure the outcomes of our cases to guard against implicit bias The only way to do that is to collect data on demographics and case outcomes. And that is very important to me. We do that at the juvenile court, and it's really changed how we treat people. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Ms. Neff, if you could talk a little bit about diversity, inclusion, equity, and/or implicit bias. How do you believe these things are important to a municipal judge?
They're very important. And people's knee-jerk reaction is, do you look at race? Do you look at gender? And everybody says, no, I treat people equally. I disagree. You need to look at it, and you need to measure the case outcomes. That's how you protect and guard against implicit bias. I also, for diversion cases, I would work with the law department to create a matrix to make sure people are getting equal opportunity for diversion cases. History will tell you that doesn't happen. And I also would implement training in the court if I am elected, just as I'm doing now, on race, equity, and inclusion. We contract with individuals who are highly trained in this area. It's important because our staff are customer service oriented, and they need to know how to be conscious of their biases when treating individuals in the court.
Thank you. Ms. Fanilli.
Thank you, Maria. I can tell you that I work as a municipal prosecutor day in and day out. And there's no question you have to be aware of any bias you might have. And I think you'll learn when you work with people that you do have to pay attention. You make sure you're treating people equally. As a judge, I would continue to do the same thing and make sure, most importantly, that the staff is, number one, educated, okay, that they have the resources they need. People say, nah, I don't have bias. Well, yeah, everybody does have some bias, whether they want to admit to it or not. But the important part is to recognize it. And I think if you bring people the resources that are out there and available, we can educate staff and know that some of these things can be solved and people can recognize what they need to do. The fact of the matter is, statistics are great, but you still have to treat each case individually, fairly and impartially, and look at the facts and circumstances of that case when you're adjudicating it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Neff, would you please describe your specific experience as a trial attorney, and do you feel that your experience as a trial lawyer brings a new perspective to the municipal court?
I'll say this, early in my career, I was a practicing attorney in numerous municipal and state courts. I have 18 years of trial experience sitting on a bench making case decisions. So I get the bird's eye view of hearing from the defense counsel and the plaintiff. So that is significant trial experience that I have. I understand the workings of the court, and it gives me an opportunity to hear all the evidence and make a case, decide a case based on the facts and the evidence. And that's critical. Anybody can learn the law, particularly in municipal court, which I'm very familiar with. I did the housing court. I heard every one of those cases, just as Sarah mentioned she did, except I decided them. I got the benefit of deciding those cases. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Fanilli.
Yeah, so there is a significant difference in sitting on the magistrate side of the bench and the advocate side of the bench. I can tell you that I've got 35 years of trial experience that includes 15 to 18 jury trials, hundreds of bench trials. And let me tell you that, most important, being on this side of the bench, you understand what it means to live with a judge's decision. You understand the impact of a judge's decision. Secondly, if you're preparing those cases, they're very in-depth. I've tried cases that have lasted anywhere from a day to a week and a half. And I can tell you that if you don't have that experience, it would be very difficult to run those trials in your courtroom without it. I think that trial experience that I have is not only in all court levels, federal, state, and municipal, but I've tried cases in municipal court on a regular basis in increasing time over the last 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Fanilli, what are your plans to ensure that landlords are held accountable for violations of local code and state law?
My plan would be to hear the cases that come before me. It is up to the city building department to make sure that those landlords, first of all, are cited if they need to be cited, that they're working with them and bringing the cases to court. If the case is brought to court, that's when we talk about it. And your obligation as a judge, whether it's the landlord or the tenant, is to look at that case fairly impartially. I can't say, and I wouldn't say, because we're not permitted to say how I would rule on a particular case. We're not permitted to do that. But it depends on the facts and circumstances of that case. If somebody's not complying with the law and the evidence is there that they're not complying with the law, then there's a potential they're going to be found guilty if it's a criminal violation. If it's some other matter, likewise, you have to look at the facts and circumstances of that particular case. And if compliance is necessary, then compliance is instituted.
Thank you. Ms. Neff.
Building code violations do need to be taken seriously because they impact health and safety, and tenants need to be safe in their home. What I did when I worked the housing court is I treated it like a mediation in essence. Landlords are investing in our community, and we want them to keep the property up so the tenants can stay in our community as well and don't lose their home. So it's important to work with both and try to get them to agree. And most landlords want to improve their property. Sometimes they don't have the income to do it immediately, so we need to work with them and give them an opportunity to make good on that. And certainly if they have repeated opportunities and do not follow through, they do need to be held accountable because there's some tenant that's suffering because of the issues that they're not addressing on the property.
Thank you. Ms. Neff, tell us what has changed in municipal courts over the last 20 years. What is new or upcoming?
There we go. So I'm aware that the limits have been changed for small claims and civil matters, which is a good thing for people who live in our community so that they don't have to go to the common police courts. And law is easily, you can easily update yourself on the law through the Supreme Court in different courses, and I would just continue to do that, work with, the attorneys as well to educate on things that I may not be familiar with, but it would be a very low learning curve for me just because I have been involved in that court with all the different type cases and contract law, which is just really, it doesn't change much at all.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Spinelli.
So I can tell you the changes. Sorry. I can tell you that the changes in the municipal court in the last 20 years are significant, and I know that because I work in municipal court every day, every week. I've been in municipal court in increasing amounts of time in the last 10 and 15 years. So not only has the law changed, it changes a lot. I did a quick survey just to see on just the top 3 criminal statutes that I work with on a regular basis, and I think I counted over 15 or 20 different changes. There can be changes that happened last week, and I'm up on those all the time because I deal with those cases on a regular basis. Yes, all the jurisdictional limits have changed, but so have things like, for example, driving under the influence. The limits have changed. The look-back period has changed. You need to be familiar with all that law, and if you look at the list of cases in the court's annual report and the different violations that get cited, they're numerous, and you have to know all of that law, and I deal with that every day.
Thank you. And final question. We'll start with Ms. Fanili, please, first. What sets you apart and makes you the better choice for Lakewood Municipal Court?
I think I'm the better choice because of my experience. I work in municipal courts and on municipal cases every week and every day. I have increased my time in municipal court over the last 10 or 15 years. Okay? I work with these cases on a daily basis. I worked in lots of municipal courts. I work in 3 of them right now. I've got a very good idea how a municipal court runs and how it should run. I am not going to have a learning curve. I hit the bench on day 1 and I know exactly what I'm doing because I've been in this environment. This is the court that I've trained for. This is the job that I want to have. This is the job that I'm ready for. And that's what sets me apart and makes me the best candidate. I know what it's like to live with a judge's decision. I've represented police officers, victims, witnesses on cases every single day. Landlords, tenants. I know what the cases are in municipal court, and that's what makes me the better candidate to be judge.
Thank you. Ms. Neff.
I believe I'm the best candidate because of my unique experience. I have the broad bird's eye view. I've been an advocate for clients early in my career, but most importantly, I have the proven judicial temperament. Not in 18 years has there been a complaint filed against me because I decided a case badly or that I treated someone unfairly or disrespectfully. That's my asset. And just because you've been an attorney a long time, as a prosecutor or anywhere for that matter, it does not mean you will be a good judge. We've seen it time and time again. Temperament and how you treat people counts. You have to be respectful of their time and them as a person and let them keep their dignity. That's what sets me apart because I see it from all angles.
Thank you both very much for your answers to those thoughtful questions. And now we will conclude with your 2-minute closing remarks, and we'll start with Ms. Vanili.
Thank you. First of all, thank you to the League of Women Voters, Chamber of Commerce for having us here tonight. We appreciate, Maria, especially you emceeing this evening. What's important here is that I have the right experience for this job. It does make a difference that you're in court every day looking at the cases in a detailed level, because that's what you're going to have to do as a judge. This municipal work I've done for 35 years and increased my time in municipal court over the last 15. Municipal court is not juvenile court. It's not common pleas court. It's not domestic relations or any of the other courts that are there. It's its own court, and it has particular cases and particular issues that are addressed there. I do work with people as a municipal prosecutor. I do exactly what needs to be done, especially when they come into me and they're not represented. I work with them to make sure that we get their case managed and dealt with and resolved. But it's the treatment of those people, likewise, with respect and dignity. I have defendants come back to me and thanking me for helping them through the process. I'm not putting a notch on my belt as a prosecutor. I'm helping the system because that's your obligation as an officer of the court. I bring to this job a wealth of knowledge and experience and skill and ability that's been recognized by other people in the community, the Cleveland Plain Dealer, Cleveland.com, Senator Sherrod Brown, Kenny Yuko, Nikki Antonio, and a whole host of other community leaders and individuals. It's my sense of fairness and my ability that allow me to be the best candidate for this particular role. I know what municipal court is. I'm in one every week, and I'm working on these cases every single day. As I said before, I will hit the bench day one and not have a learning curve. I believe I also bring with me years of experience and engagement in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Knapp, your 2-minute closing.
Thank you. I've been in public service for 28 years with the goal only of helping people. And I have done that all along, and I plan to do it at Lakewood Court if I'm successful in this election. I've been involved in the law, and I am every day. Even though it's juvenile court, we deal with contract issues, and it's the same criminal code as in Lakewood Court. There's no difference there. It's just that a child is found to be delinquent versus guilty. So I am involved, my feet are wet, I'm knee-deep in all of the law. What's important is how you treat people and if you're trusted. I have longevity in my jobs. I'm trusted by people. I have not bounced around to multiple jobs over the decades. And I think that's important because it speaks to your character and integrity. And I have the experience to improve Lakewood Court. I have these wonderful ideas that I've learned over the years at the juvenile court, which is a much larger organization. I also have phenomenal endorsements. And with all due respect, senators and House representatives don't appear in court daily. They don't interact with you. I have the Fraternal Order of Police. I have a lot of labor. Those are people with boots on the ground working hard. And I have Cameo, the Middle Eastern Arab American group. So people trust me to make good decisions on their behalf that are fair and that I treat people equally. You need to be kind as a judge, and you need to listen, and I have all those qualities, and I have the proven record for 18 years of being a good judicial officer. Thank you.
Thank you both very much. Let's give them a round of applause. It has been my pleasure and honor to be your moderator tonight, and I'm going to ask Teresa from the League of Women Voters to come up and give closing remarks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maria. My name is Teresa Andriani, and I'm the Voter Service Chair for the Lakewood League of Women Voters. On behalf of the Lakewood chapter of the Lakewood Women Voters of Greater Cleveland and our presenting partner, the Lakewood Chamber of Commerce, I'd like to thank the candidates not only for your attendance this evening, but also for your willingness to serve the public through elected office. Our thanks as well to our memberships and especially to our volunteers for their service this evening. Thank you also to all of you who attended in person or who are watching the recording of this evening's program. Before we close, I'd like to share a little bit of important information. Those of you in the audience found a survey on your chair. We ask that you complete it and leave it on the tables as you leave. You also received a sample ballot, and we want to remind you that that is, in fact, a sample ballot. And checking it off and dropping it off with us will not count as an official vote. To be eligible to vote in the November election, you must be registered to vote by October 4th. In addition to special voter registration events, you can also register anytime at either branch of the Lakewood Public Library. Early in-person voting at the Cuyahoga County Board of Elections begins on October 5th, and Election Day is Tuesday, November 6th. Second, polls will open between 6:30 and 7:30 p.m. Election Day is November 2nd. Polls will be open between 6:30 and 7:30 p.m. And finally, events like this Candidates Forum, as well as other voter education and good government advocacy efforts, happen because of committed citizens and strong and vibrant community organizations working together. We'd like to extend this invitation to you to join the League of Women Voters and to join the Lakewood Chamber of Commerce and to work with us as we work for the good of our Lakewood community. Thank you so much.